everyone to the channel. Look who's I have with me. I'm so excited to have the creator and executive producer of the 3-year New York City hit off Broadway show of Puffs, which I got to see once. I'm so upset about that, and that was running for 2 years in Australia. He is also the former DreamWorks exec for Shrek's the Musical, but currently the CEO and founder of Gamiotics, whose technology you could see at 20-sided Tavern, the off-Broadway play I've seen twice. So,
Right.
welcome, David Carpenter. So glad to have you on the show. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, thank you for the follow. I'm so happy that you're here. I'm super excited to ask you all these wonderful questions and also to talk about the show because I have watched it twice already. I have a ticket for later on in December after I come back from PAX U to see it a third time.
Are you coming to see it with Erika Ishii? Is that when
I
you're coming in?
wanted to, but it's around the same time that I'm going to PAX Unplugged, so
Right.
I can't make it. But I got to see Felicia at
Yeah.
Felicia Day, and I got to see Abria, which I was super happy about,
Yeah.
excited for. So that was so much fun. So we'll see which guest star is there for when I finally get to go. But I'm so happy that you're here, and I want to ask you a bunch, all the questions I could possibly ask you. But guys, just so you're aware, we are here for only an hour. It's not your typical show, so get your questions in by putting in channel points for 50 channel points to see whatever questions you want to ask David around 20 minutes before the end of the show. But where did the idea for the interactive D&D Broadway show come from?
Okay. So I have been working in New York theater for about almost 25 years now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And as you mentioned, I produced a play off Broadway called Puffs. That started back in 2015,
mm-hmm.
and I ran in New York for 3 years, almost exactly 3 years. Um, During the time that so the other thing about me is that I'm a big video gamer, I'm a big board gamer, big nerd, sci-fi fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I cover the swath of everything you can imagine. I'm halfway through Lev Grossman's new book on King Arthur's courts,
Oh,
which I highly recommend to everybody. Um, um, while at the same time I'm reading the new James S. A. Corey movie, right? Their new space opera. So anyway, like that's just like the level I work. And so I had seen Sleep No More when
mm-hmm.
it originally happened here in New York. You don't know what Sleep No More is? It's one of the big immersive set in a building in New York that
Okay.
over 5 floors. The thing about Sleep No More is that you go in and you're free to wander this entire building that is a set, and there is a it's a non-verbal Macbeth that's happening around you all through over the course of this building and all the storylines and all these things, and it's a wildly popular show. It's been running in New York for a little over a decade now.
Really? I have to check that out. That sounds amazing.
Um, um, and I was in Sleep No More and I was watching it. And I was just so taken. The company that produces a company called Punch Drunk,
Mm-hmm.
who are hugely popular in London. And I was struck by that as a consumer, as a patron in the experience, that I got to choose what story I wanted to follow, what actor I wanted to follow, what room I wanted to be in. Like I helped piece together this story through the my actions, the choice of my movement,
Mm-hmm.
and it was an extraordinary. This is the first time I'd ever had in an entertainment experience that kind of level of agency over the experience. But the thing that occurred to me while I was in it, and as I was and I had was thinking about it was no choice I make affected the narrative at all. The narrative
Oh,
was always the
okay.
narrative no matter what. There was no choice I made that would change anything,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And I was like, gosh, wouldn't that be cool? That if I could make a choice that then determine that, like a video game or a
Mm-hmm.
choose your own adventure book,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Right. And so that idea like took hold, and I think that when you're an entrepreneur, and you're looking for ideas and you're looking for things to do, I couldn't shake this idea.
Okay.
And in 2015 I came across a show that was, when the audience walked in, they were handed 4-button remotes or radio frequency remotes that was tied to educational polling software. The
Mm-hmm.
premise of the show was that it was about a guy who was always unlucky in love, and he finds this object, and this genie pops out of the object and says, "I'm going to help you find true love."
Oh
Right?
wow. Okay.
And the gimmick in it was the audience was able to make choices for this guy. What woman was ultimately chosen, which was deeply misogynistic, but we don't have to deal with that right now. But like all the choices about the date and the evening that they had on that evening, right? The audience made the choices. So, and embedded in the show was a point system that if they chose, basically if they chose 100% favorably for the guy all the way throughout the date, at the end of the show, they got the ending where he slept with the girl, right? Because that was the reward. Again,
Right.
deeply misogynistic,
Deeply
right?
misogynistic.
But they made all of the bad choices and he didn't get any girl.
Okay.
And he threw himself off a bridge, and then 15 other things in between, right?
Gotcha.
And it was the first time I'd ever seen that type of interactivity and agency for an audience, like in a live performance, that actually had it work successfully, because it was a successful execution of the idea. Content, totally different story, right?
Right.
So I optioned the show, right? And I was like, I got to figure this thing out. And one of the things I said to the author was, I don't like the mechanism that you have. I'm going to go figure out something else. And when I long story short, met a programmer based in California who was a big theater lover. And look, I have this problem. And everyone was saying, oh, well, it should be an app. And again, this is back in 2015, 2016. It was like everybody was developing apps. And I said, absolutely not, right? Like there's no way that this could work as an app in live entertainment for a variety of reasons. I said, I want it to be web-based. I want it to be instantaneous. And that's where Gamiotics was originally born, right?
Oh, okay. That makes
right?
sense. Okay.
He was trying to solve an audience solution for this other show that I owned. Well, I'd given a bunch of notes to the author on the script. And 3 months later, he turned in a script that was identical to the original script. And I called him, I said, you haven't made any changes. And he's like, well, you didn't like my show. So you shouldn't, I don't think you're the right producer for it. And I was like, okay, you're right. I was like,
oh,
you're
wow,
right.
rude.
So I was left with this software that I was developing and not a show.
Right.
And so I commissioned a new show.
Okay.
And I spent 2.5 years working on a project that integrated the software. And I couldn't get that show off the ground, right? Like, and it was a learning experience. It was a painful, it was expensive learning experience. And during that iteration of it, the author was using the software as a gimmick, not as a tool. And I couldn't get them over that hump about how to integrate this software platform into the storytelling. And unfortunately, I threw everything on the wall against it. And a friend of mine saw a reading that one of the last readings that we did of the show, and he walked out and said, ditch the show, you've got a platform, run with the platform. And he was right.
Okay.
So I was producing the shows. Puffs was in the mix during this. I produced a show on Broadway called Love a Snow Show that I did in 2019, which was extraordinary. And then I decided in 2020, January 2020, that I was going to dedicate myself full time to the development of this platform.
Okay.
And then the pandemic hit in March.
Yeah.
So I remember after live entertainment shut down globally, I think it was like March 13th, 14th, something like that.
March 13th, I remember.
March 13th, right? Kind of stared at the wall for 3 days, being like, "Oh shit, now what do I do?"
Right.
And I walked down and said to my husband, I said, "We have exactly 2 assets to our name right now. We have this house that we live in and we own, and we have the software. I'm not selling the house. Let's see what we can do with the software." And then I called my best friend in the world, and I said, who was a playwright, and she was a grad, had her MFA from Columbia. And I said, I need you to help me start writing interactive stories. We're gonna call friends, we're gonna do them on Zoom, and we're gonna use my software. We're gonna entertain people at home and figure this thing out.
Oh man!
Right. So the 3 of us started it. That really was the beginning of Gamiotics, right? That was the moment when it actually really started. 18 months. 20-hour-long online live interactive shows later, I had a writer's room, I had tons and tons of people. I raised about $500,000 in money to get us through that time period. And what happened is that I use cased all the ways to use the software to tell stories in a live interactive way, right? And it was all done over Zoom. One of the things that we did was a D&D show. During that time frame, and I remember watching it because like I said, I'm a huge gamer. I know enough about D&D, certainly a lot more now, right?
Yes.
And played and but the same way. We'll talk a little bit about Puffs, I'm sure. The same way I felt about Potter, right?
Right.
I read the Potter books. I'd seen half the movies. I was very immersed in the fandom, but like I wasn't a crazy. I'm sorry, I wasn't a fanatic of
Right,
Potter.
right.
Right? I produced something for the fanatics, but I myself wasn't a fanatic of it. I was a fan, but not right, but not a hardcore fan, right? Because I've always told people that like I like my fantasy with a little bit more sex and drugs than what J.K. Rowling. So same thing on D&D, which is like I'm a huge RPG, TTRPG fan. Like I play everything I get my hands on, right? I love
Yes,
it, right? And D&D is the basis for the entire genre, right?
yes, yes.
So if there wasn't anything that I didn't know or wasn't familiar with or didn't do. I just am not a lore guy when it comes to D&D, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so so we did the show, and it behaved differently than everything else that we had written and that we had done, and it worked in a way. And I remember as I'm sitting there and I'm doing my research and I'm looking at actual play and I'm looking at what everybody else has done,
Mm-hmm.
I realized that no one had successfully cracked the problem of how do you do a live stage D&D experience.
Right.
And I remember that summer to the people who helped develop it with me saying, if we can fix that, if we can figure that out, it's going to be huge.
Right.
And I said, we're shutting down the online stuff that we're doing because the pandemic's easing. We need to start moving back into in-person entertainment, like
Mm-hmm.
in 21, summer 21. This is the project that this is what I want to work on. This is what I want to do and develop and move forward. And so made a very fateful choice to pursue it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we did it at the Philly Fringe Festival, and it was folding tables and box of props for 2 performances only, and a very different version of what we have now. But the audience went crazy for it from moment one. And I just knew that it was lightning in a bottle. And from that point forward, like, can I swear on this podcast? Is that allowed?
Absolutely, 100%.
I basically said to everybody, it's our job now. Like, this works. I know this works. I know how to do this. It's our job now not to fuck this up.
Right.
Right. And so that was in September of 21. And that's where the journey for the 20-sided tavern started.
Okay.
And it's now Dungeons and Dragons, the 20-sided tavern.
Yeah, which brings me into my next question. You
Yeah.
have partnered with Wizards of the Coast, and with this year being their 50th anniversary of D&D, what do you want to see come of this collaboration with Wizards of the Coast?
Well, I'm getting everything that I wanted to see out of this collaboration. So we had a homebrew, right?
Okay.
That's what we had. 20-sided tavern is a homebrew. It was set in a different world.
Mm-hmm.
It was a different campaign. It was like 4 other campaigns that we'd written.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't use any Wizards of the Coast IP, right?
Okay.
Like
Okay.
there was no D&D IP in there
Mm-hmm.
whatsoever. Everything was custom. We created the methodology and the mechanics about how you do this as a live stage show, right? In terms of the stuff that we do. So like the dice cams, the projections, the a lot of the fun things, the games, the analog games that we do.
Yeah.
That was all developed under Gamiotics and the early days of 20th Tavern. So the show, the first production that we did these one-offs in New York, but then the first real production that we did was at the Pittsburgh Civic Light Opera, the Pittsburgh CLO,
Mm-hmm.
in March, April 22, and it was extraordinary, right? Like we got an audience, we had an amazing audience that was there, and we really actually kind of started figuring out what the show was. So we didn't really know what the show was as we were developing it. I had been in conversation with Edinburgh Fringe Festival since pre-pandemic. I really liked them. They wanted me to bring a show over. They loved my technology idea, and they were looking for me to bring something. And I pitched them as we were going into the Pittsburgh run. I said to my friends over at Pleasance, I said, I got a show. They're like, send us a script. I'm like, I don't have a script yet, but I have a show. And they said, okay. And they took a risk on me, right? And so we went from Pittsburgh, and then we did Edinburgh Fringe Festival in August of 22. In between this, we did these week-long engagements in New York.
Yeah.
We rent a theater for a week, 99 seat, 120 seat, whatever.
Yeah.
Sold
Couldn't
them
get
out.
a ticket. Could
Yeah,
not get a ticket.
Right.
Like the bane of my existence, but it's okay.
And so, I mean, that was all early day stuff, right?
Yeah.
So as we were getting ready for Edinburgh,
Mm-hmm.
the Nederlander organization, which is a big theater owner here in New York and nationally, who I'm friends with, approached me and said, "We love what you're doing. We want to do this in Chicago for 3 months. We're going to make you a deal that you can't pursue. We're going to do the Broadway Playhouse. It's a 550 seat theater. You got to do it." And I literally in July was like, "Oh, I got to go raise $1.2 million while I'm in Edinburgh." Okay. And was just like, "This is insane. This is the stupidest thing I've ever done. I could lose everything in doing this." And I just said, "Fine, I'm going to do it." Now, so we did Edinburgh and then went right into Chicago for a 3 month run. For it's about $1 million production that we did in Chicago. They helped out with probably easy another $1 million in terms of their own costs, right, in order to develop it. Okay, so back to the Hasbro of it all, right? The Wizards of the Coast, right?
Right.
So my partner in my software company is a partner in a company in London called Path Entertainment, Game Path Entertainment,
Yes.
right? Game Path, they produce an experience called Monopoly Life Sized, right?
Okay.
Which is a large-scale interactive Monopoly board game experience, right?
Okay.
And David Hutchinson, who's the CEO of Path, had built a relationship with Hasbro, who owns all this IP because they own
Right.
Wizards of the Coast, about taking their IP into location-based entertainment experiences. And Monopoly was a big thing that they did. I think this started pre-pandemic and then launched during the pandemic, right? Or as the pandemic was easing, right? So my business partner and it put me and David Hutchinson together to see if there was a way that my homebrew D&D style show, right, could become an official D&D show. And so David went to Hasbro and said, "You guys really need to do this."
Right.
And effectively set up the license agreement with us in order to be able to access the D&D IP. That's all him. He did that. Wow. He did that whole thing, right? So it's like we built this relationship between these companies where he had the relationship and he had the expertise in terms of the IP acquisition, and I had the content and the show and the experience, right? And then also the fandom knowledge. And we kind of and so the companies have joined efforts in order to further this show. And we'll talk more about what's happening next with that moving forward. But that's basically how it came together. It's like we shared a business partner who then was sitting there going, "You guys need to work together because you're both after the same idea here, just from different angles."
Right. Oh my gosh.
And the Wizards thing is that the sad thing about Puffs, right?
Yeah.
The sad thing about Puffs is that, and the good thing about Puffs is that Puffs was doing really, really well in New York, right? I was we were having a great run. We were selling tickets. We were surviving. Like it was doing well. And the minute Cursed Child came to market and opened on Broadway, I lost my entire audience.
Yeah.
It evaporated in 3 months, right? And I remember saying, and I actually, it's because they opened in like May or something, or like probably in that was in 2019. I just remember looking at the numbers being like, I'm not gonna make it through September. Like we are on our way out. Like our audience has disappeared.
Yeah.
So we announced closing, and we sold out the rest of the run, but there was nothing left for us. I mean, it was all of our fans who came back and supported us, or people who have been like waiting to see the show. And it was a really bitter lesson, right? Because J.K. Rowling did not like the fact that we existed.
Yep, I was just about to ask that question. How, what lessons did you learn from doing Puffs and when it came to an end? Because I know she's not a big fan of fanfics or parody.
No, she is not. No, she's not at all. Yeah. She sent a lot of lawyers after me. I had a lot of meetings with some very, very expensive lawyers who were not pleased with what we were doing.
Okay.
I have one of the best IP attorneys in the country, trademark copyrights attorney in the company. This woman named Heidi Tandy, who's out of a firm in Miami called Berger Singerman, and she is the absolute best. And Heidi steered us to avoid any issues in brand confusion, any issues in IP copy trademarks.
Right.
The show was built as a parody and following parody and copy and trademark rules to a T.
Yes.
We never stepped out of line, right? Not once. And so there was nothing legally actionable against us in the United States,
Okay.
right? Um, the problem is I really wanted to take the show to the UK,
Right.
and she made it very clear that they would sue us if we ever tried to open a production up in the UK.
Oh, that's awful.
Right. Oh, really, really clear.
Oh, that sucks. So how did you end up in Melbourne and Brisbane and Sydney?
So the parody laws in the US
Mm-hmm.
and Canada and Australia are all virtually identical.
Okay. Okay.
That's it.
That's it.
Globally. That's it. Right? It is not advisable for me to produce or license the show anywhere but those 3 countries.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so now what happened during the pandemic is I always felt I knew who she was,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I've been saying for years, and this is from 2016, 2015, 2016 through 2019, of like, I think I know who this person is, right? Because of the way that I am being bullied and intimidated
Yes.
about this show that venerates the Potter fandom.
Right.
Like, and what kind of person tries to stomp down something that celebrates the thing you built?
Thank
right?
you. That makes no sense. But okay, I digress. Go ahead.
And then we all learned during the pandemic what kind of person that she is,
Yes,
right? And
yes.
through her own public statements,
Yes.
right? I felt very vindicated, right? I felt
Yes.
very vindicated, right? What has happened is 2 things now, right? So Puffs is now the number 2 most licensed show in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
for stock amateur, right? Every high school, every middle school, colleges, community theaters, everybody does Puffs.
Everybody does Puffs, yes.
Productions every week, right? And when I was at Comic-Con a couple weeks ago, I happened to mention that I produced Puffs on stage, and several people come up to me and was like, I was in my high school production of Puffs, right? What it does is that it allows people to play in the Potter universe without actually having to play in the Potter universe,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it's a gateway for people who want to do it. Number 2 is the cast was 11 size,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of the roles in New York were doubled or tripled, right? Depending on all the things that had to be. So if you're a middle school and you want to cast 22 kids in a class in a show,
Yep.
and gender isn't really that precious in that show,
Yep.
Puffs gets done, right?
It's so easy. It's
so
such
easy
a good
to do.
show to eat. Such a good show to do for kids.
And I started hearing from teachers who felt like they could do Potter and not offend their trans kids,
Yes.
because she doesn't make any money from it.
Right.
And it became a safe harbor to be able to celebrate the thing you love without paying the person you hate.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And that's become really actually important to me, that it has been able to provide that to the fandom in a way that the thing for me is, and I've said this many times when I talk about Puffs is the idealism of American free speech,
Yes.
right? And that's what's so beautiful about it,
Mm-hmm.
is that we can comment and transform about this thing and celebrate this thing in a way that really venerates what the idealism of American free speech is, and why the laws are built the way they do. So it's turned into a really beautiful thing. Matt Cox, who wrote it, is such a funny guy. He's so smart, and wrote a beautiful play. I just happened to be able to produce it very well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we got lost on track of the Puffs thing.
It's okay.
So the Hasbro, which is because I'm really good at knowing IP and copyright law, because I am really good at knowing IP and copyright law and what to do and not to do. We were able to develop the show. In such a way that when it reached a fork in the road,
Mm-hmm.
we could stay homebrew or we could go Hasbro,
Right.
and watch, right?
Right.
And because of my experience on Path, I'm sorry, on Puffs, I also knew what the road looked like to not be an official show,
Right.
right? And there is something really powerful with fandoms about being official. There's something
Yes.
there's something really cool. Certainly, I know about being an unofficial and being an unauthorized, but I've had that journey, and I really wanted to take the journey of what does it mean to become part of the official,
Right.
and that was the path that I chose this time around. And I no looking back on
And
that.
it has been absolutely successful because people are just like, there's a D&D show, and that's
Yeah.
what they, we
Well,
know it's 20 sided, but it's a D&D show.
I mean, the reaction that we get during the show when the DM says, "And this journey and the story takes place in Waterdeep,"
Yes.
and the audience claps. You're like, "That's it right
Yeah.
there." Like they have imagined Waterdeep, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've imagined what a story or they participated in a story
Yep.
that they've created in Waterdeep. Now they get to see what we do, right? And it means something to them. It's meaningful to them,
Right.
right?
Right.
So that's part of what being the official is. And then we get to use a lot of fun stuff,
Yep.
right? We get to play with a lot of fun
You
stuff.
have a lot of cool props. Guys, if you ever go to this show and you're sitting in the front row or you're hanging around after the show, whatever, for if they have questions and answers, look at the stage and see what you can recognize.
Yeah,
There's
there's a
so
ton of stuff
much.
there on that thing.
There's a ton of stuff up there. I love it. Um,
Casey McGeorge, who's our production designer, our set designer, just did an amazing job of putting
it's
lore and putting a
gorgeous.
lot of stuff in that set. That's all DD. It's really, really cool.
No spoilers, but things light up. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, yeah,
Are there any plans to expand outside of the United States? I know the
sure.
answer to this, but I want everyone to know, what are your plans for other countries?
So right now, we have announced this and it's happening right now, which is we're doing a production at the Sydney Opera House.
Mm-hmm.
So that first performance of that is December 15th. It opens December 18th, and it runs 4 months in Sydney. So our director is going down in about 2.5 weeks to start rehearsals. I have to stay in New York until the day after Thanksgiving, because I have to get our next star in the show
Mm-hmm.
and oversee it. Travis McElroy's coming in the show for a week. Oh, did you? Yeah, yeah. Travis McElroy's coming in the show for a week during Thanksgiving week. Yeah. And we can talk
Damn!
about Starcasting if you want to. Starcasting has been super fun on this.
Oh
Um,
God. Okay. Okay. I gotta figure out how to get tickets before I go to PAX. Okay.
uh, so then once we get Travis in, I'll go down to Sydney for tech and then opening before heading back. And yeah, that's pretty cool. And so hopefully there will be further opportunities after Sydney Opera House. But like, it's just really cool that we're doing this co-production with Sydney Opera House
Mm-hmm.
within our first year. They're really excited about the show. It's selling really well.
So good.
And it's a different footprint. It's in their black box theater, so we've had to
Mm-hmm.
do a scenic redesign. There'll be a new lighting design going in. It's a reduced version of the show, but the screens are the same size. The
Right.
show's going to be all about the screens now, in a really big way. So that's really cool. And then the U.S. tour will go out starting in July.
Okay.
We've already announced that it's going to be playing the Kennedy Center in D.C., which is in July. And I have about 40 weeks lined up, and we haven't announced anything else quite yet. I'm trying to put a couple of anchor deals together right now,
Okay.
so that we can get moving on the rest of the tour. But we will be out starting in July of 25, and hopefully on the road for many, many years.
So off-topic question then. Well, not really off-topic. Do you plan on going to any cons with the show? Like
Yeah.
even just a small prep? Really?
Yeah. No, I mean, like, the fan service of the cons that we do. I mean, like, I don't have a version of the show that I can take to a con quite
Okay.
yet, but eventually,
Okay.
you
Eventually,
know,
that'd be fun.
eventually we'll figure something out. It's just that it's not quite in the financial plan quite yet.
Okay, gotcha, gotcha.
Yeah.
So, look, like I said, I've been to the show twice. I've seen Abria, I've seen Felicia. Both times I got to interact. The first time with Felicia, I was on stage, made me very, very happy. Um, but 20-sided Tavern promises a different experience every time you sit down in a seat. How many experiences can you get from that campaign alone?
So the way that the show works in terms of all the possible variables, there's something like 300,000 possibilities that could happen on stage every single night, right? Like it is one of those types of shows, right? And like and it's just that's when you total up everything. So the show has like three main pathways
Mm-hmm.
that I can go on. Like and you meet different characters and have different experiences depending on which pathway you're going to. Second act is a second act, but we have this thing called the chaos chart. We have a chaos chart that's in the second act that just makes it kind of insane. And where you are in the second act is kind of determined by where you go in the first act. So there's different places you can go. And then the endings, there's a lot of different stuff that can happen with the endings of the show, right? And then you kind of introduce the improvisational nature of what the actors are doing on stage, right? And so every actor is bringing their own stuff to stage every
Yeah.
night in
Yeah.
terms of the story that they want their character to tell that night. So it really is never ever the same show twice, right? You go, the adventure is always the same adventure, right?
Right.
It's a 2.5 hour one shot, right?
Right.
And that 2.5 hour one shot is really straightforward, right? Wizard in Waterdeep
Mm-hmm.
stumbles into a tavern because the world's going to end, and he needs 3 heroes to help him prevent the world from ending, and they got to come back to his house so he can tell him what needs to happen. They travel through Waterdeep and go back to his house, where they learn that 100 years ago, he and his friend, his lover, his whatever it is that night, um, had uncovered a terrible magic called the Havoc
Yep.
and had released it, and the Wizards Council had contained the Havoc in a sarcophagus, and
Mm-hmm.
100 years later, that Havoc is now reaching out of the sarcophagus. So what they need to do is find ritual items in Waterdeep to redo the ritual and reseal the sarcophagus so the world doesn't end,
Right.
right? And the wizard is feeling incredibly guilty about this because he caused it, and now he has to stop it from happening again.
Right.
Uh, and that's the adventure they go on. They go through Waterdeep, they find the ritual items, they chase the big bad in order to prevent the end of the world, right?
Right.
What happens in between all of that is the show,
Yeah.
right? Which is like the interactions between the characters, the stories they're telling each other, the stories the audience is supplying with us that are layered into this adventure is what makes it a different show every single night. And then
Really different.
yeah,
It's really
uh,
different. They're very, very different.
and we treat the audience, we call them the fifth player,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or the fourth player. We call the audience the fourth player because what they're bringing to the table, what they're suggesting, what they're responding to, what they're providing us is they are helping us craft that story every night.
Right.
So it rests on the pillars of what a wonderful D&D game is, which is what you bring to the table. And the improvisational nature, the characters, the roll of the die, all the things that make up D&D, we've taken that and we've turned it into our version of a stage show, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have like software as the interactive as the agency. I'm sorry, as the tool for the audience to be able to interact and be able to make choices and be able to solve puzzles and to play games and all the things they need to do in order for them to have stakes and to have an effect on the outcome, because they do affect the outcome
Yes.
by using the software. So, and the show, like I said, the show is built on this platform, right?
Right. So it's not only the software or the platform, but you have also, and I've been one of those people, yay, have the cast bring people onto the stage to actually interact and be part of the show. Um, was that originally part of something that you wanted to happen, or was that happened as the story got told along the way?
Um, it it started happening, I want to say, in a significant way in Pittsburgh,
Okay.
of when we started layering in how the audience was starting to participate in this. And it was something that grew into the show because the audience loves it, right?
Yes.
They love being able to come up and participate with us. And what I particularly love about it is that it's all done through consent, which
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
which is no one's called up on stage. You have to volunteer if you want to go.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I love it. I love the fact that you have to volunteer. Um, so obviously there's no predetermined paths, but uh, when the audience comes in, they're handed a playbill,
Mhm.
a Broadway playbill that everyone gets when they go to off Broadway or Broadway show, and inside it's a little card, pretty much
It's a
saying
sticker.
a sticker, which I
Right.
have two. I'm getting need one more for my
Right.
collection. But uh, why those stickers, and why did you really insist on having Gamionics not be an app, but have it be something that you just temporarily use?
So the app is an easy question, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
is um, audience behavior,
Right.
right? Most audiences Well, first off, actually, this is a personal preference. I don't want it to be an app because I don't need another thing on my phone tracking my data. Right? I'm serious, right? Like, no, I'm dead serious about that. Like, I have my banking app, I have my Delta app because I travel a lot, obviously for work. I have a series of apps that I use,
Hmm.
right? My email and things, right? If I'm going to a show, I don't want apps that I'm only going to use once or twice.
Right, right,
The vast majority of the audience is not coming to my show more than two, three, four times, right?
right.
I don't need to spend $500,000 developing an app for that, right?
True.
So, and part of it, and people always used to ask me all the time. They're like, "Well, don't you want everyone's data?" And I was like, "No,
No.
I don't. I don't actually want everyone's data because, truthfully,
Hmm.
I have everyone's data when they buy a ticket. Like, I
True.
don't need another thing, right? And I don't like the Big Brother aspect of the app following me around everywhere I go. So I didn't want to do that to an audience member. Because that's a personal choice, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
From a practical level, most audiences arrive at the theater at 5 or 10 minutes before, or 1 minute before the curtain goes up, right? Yeah, right. Most people are not going to read instructions pre-show
Yeah.
to
Yep.
say you got to do this to do the show.
Yeah.
It's a massive barrier of entry to say you have to buy a ticket and do a thing,
Right.
right? And I knew that from consumer behavior that was never going to fly whatsoever. So it had to be what I call it disposable tech, right?
Mm.
Because it's web based and it shows up on your phone. When the show's over, you close your web browser and off you go, and it's
Right.
gone and it's out of your mind. It also reinforces the belief that the software is a tool and
Hmm.
not a gimmick,
Yes.
right? That it's there to serve the storytelling. It is there to serve the audience's engagement and nothing else, right?
Gotcha. Gotcha.
And so it's successful because it's simple. And I think in this technology laden days that we're in, a lot of developers really trying to overcomplicate stuff, and I did not want to. Now, do I want to make this more complicated? 1,000%. There's a ton of stuff that I want to do with it, right?
Right.
But to launch it, it's hard to explain the barriers I had on getting people to understand why this would be effective
Hmm.
because no one believed me. No one believed.
Really?
No one believed me. It
With
is
all
not. It
with
is. It is. It looks obvious to you now because you've seen the show. It is not obvious whatsoever. Yeah.
huh? With all your experience and everything that you have under your belt, no one really. Wow, that's
Well, obviously, some people believe me because I'm
right.
here now, right? Well, years of trying to convince people, and people like it's never going to work. It's never going to work, right? My partner in my software company is a guy named Hunter Arnold, and he comes out. He like been a producer on Broadway for 2 decades. Like he's a huge producer, but also comes from the tech world, right?
Hmm.
And is
Hmm.
a big believer in the integration of technology and entertainment in the same way that I am, and that's why is because we actually share this passion and this belief that what we're doing with this is leading the charge into the next generation. And of course, my point of view has to do with storytelling,
Right.
right? Like I am looking for the next generation of storytelling, which is video game style story architecture in the live entertainment space. That's
Right.
what I'm, and on a larger level, it's the gamification of the entertainment experience, right? So like I always tell people I do sports entertainment for nerds, right? That's what I do.
Pretty much.
Sports is just game,
That's literally what
right?
it is.
Sports
Yeah,
is
you're
game,
right.
and like you as a sports fan, right? Like you have stakes in who you're rooting for.
Hmm.
You don't
Hmm.
have agency, you don't have control of players, but you have your stakes walking in the door, right?
Right.
When you're looking at the gamification on the video game level, you have to build stakes into the story that you're telling for the audience to have. Like I gotta really feel something about the, and so like that's what my job is over
Right.
here, right?
Right.
But it's really fundamentally the same thing for the consumer,
Okay.
right?
100%. 100%. I love
Yeah,
this. So
yeah,
TTRPG. I just want to move away from Wizards of the Coast and 20 sided
yeah.
Tavern for a second. But TTRPG specifically, D&D is slowly kind of growing its own following, especially on social media.
It's always been there. I disagree. It's always been there. It's finally like that. Like
It's
no, it's just a
exploding.
rising tide. Yeah.
So why do you think that this genre is gaining such a popularity, especially on like TikTok, here on Twitch and other plays with the and do you think with the oversaturation with actual plays, and TTRPG content creators, that it will kill that momentum
Well,
eventually.
I don't think we're oversaturated in actual plays,
Okay,
right? I mean,
really?
I think that no, I don't actually. I think the reality is that it's still a nascent industry, really. I mean,
Hmm.
yes, Critical Role is 10 years old now, right? But Critical Role is only 10 years old,
It's only 10 years
right?
old. Yes.
Right? Like that is not very much time.
No. No.
Um, there isn't, from a marketplace standpoint, there isn't a lot of maturity in terms of talent within the market. I don't mean immature people, I mean people who have the experience to kind of pull this off. So what we're looking
Hmm.
at right now is that you have people who, all of them are Hollywood actors who also happen to be D&D players, who
Right.
then found that being a D&D player was more like financially like solvent for them than being an actor, right? They're
Hmm.
all improv actors and all stars, every last one of them, right?
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
all went to Hollywood to find fame and fortune in film and television, and found fame and fortune in D&D, right?
Right.
And on
Right.
YouTube, really. The I It's a new media audience, for
Hmm.
one.
Hmm.
They're not consuming entertainment the way that your parents did. Certainly not the way my parents did,
Right.
right? In any way, shape, or form. Um, the reason why it's exploding, two really good reasons,
Hmm.
right? It is it is a safe expression of creativity.
Hmm.
It's a safe expression of sexuality. It's a safe expression of gender. The idea of creative role playing has taken hold because it's inherently a creative outlet for people, and it's
Hmm.
something that they own, something that they create, and it's something, and it's some and it's fun, right?
Yeah.
To be
Yeah.
able to do
Yeah.
that level. That's why I think, I don't see it. I see I see it continue to expand. I think, like, again, people like Critical Role, like Dimension 20 and Adventure Zone, are like, Critical Role in particular is building now their own game mechanics. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously they have, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so there isn't. I don't think that there is a lack of that happening with the TTRPG plays. Like, I like my birthday's on Sunday. I've asked for board games. I'm like, I don't care what, just get me new board games. I love new game mechanics, right?
Right.
So, I think that's all. I think that's part of it. Again, I think what we're seeing is a rise in the gamification of the entertainment experience, because entertainment has become so complicated now,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Our entertainment has become so completely diversified, and it's way more in our lives than it
Yes.
ever was before. The pandemic changed a lot of that.
Hmm. Hmm.
That that we are needing more interactive entertainment in order to satisfy our needs as consumers. It's our tastes are changing right now, right? And a lot of that has to do with the generation that was raised on iPads and iPhones,
Yep.
right? Is
Hmm.
that they are, from early ages, attuned to interactive entertainment right from the get-go. And
Hmm.
so the larger entertainment world at play is shifting in that direction. And like, this is where I started as a kid, so this just feels natural to me
Right.
now, as someone in their mid 40s, right? Where I am lucky is that I have all this experience in live theatrical and in New York, and I can raise money, and I can do all the things that you need to do to build the business, right? But
Hmm.
I'm the oldest guy in the room now.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, excuse me, 20-sided Tavern is very unique in a lot of different ways. What advice would you give someone that would like to emulate what you're doing um, in New York and eventually in Australia?
Well, not. I mean, look, so I worked on Broadway, right? And
Hmm.
I left Broadway because I didn't want to. I didn't really. I decided I didn't want to work in the form anymore. I didn't want to leave live theatrical, live stage theatrical. I just didn't want to work specifically on Broadway.
Hmm.
What I've done is I moved into experiential interactive entertainment, right?
Right.
And part of what I'm doing with Gamiotics is eventually, when the software is available to license by other people. It's not available right now. It's only
Hmm.
for use, by me and my team. Um, when it is eventually, the problem with experiential entertainment and interactive entertainment is that it's hard to do without a lot of money,
Right.
right? Like the Meow Wolves of the world, which is you would consider the leader of immersive entertainment.
Hmm.
Their last thing cost $75 million to build. You can't do that coming out of college, right? Like, it's an insane. And so there is a barrier that exists right now for people who want to work in experiential entertainment
Hmm.
versus people who are leading the charge right now, and it's a big goal. That eventually those walls come down. Eventually they do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And part of the point of gamiotics is to be able to democratize this industry that's growing, that I feel is going to be the largest sector of the entertainment universe within the next 20 years, is to be able to provide a tool that allows you to build your own different type of storytelling,
Right.
right? So that you could do, so like eventually that someone could license my show and they can do it at a high school. Can't be done yet.
Yeah.
Haven't figured out how to do that yet, right? But I know it's possible,
Right.
right? So
Right.
that's what I'm trying to do, right? Is I'm
Okay.
trying to build this now in a way that eventually a high school can do this show, so the
Mm-hmm.
kids who are in the high school doing the show then go to college to go build their own thing.
Right. Which would be amazing. That's like
Okay.
it would be amazing to be in high school to be able to like do a TST style.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing. To interact with
Hopefully
the.
within the next 5 years. Hopefully within the next 5 years. I got some mountains to climb before I get there. That was the goal.
I mean, you're well on your way. So, do you DM at all?
I don't know. I don't.
Okay.
No,
So,
I'm not. Yeah.
but I do have a question then because we're getting very close toward the end. But rules is written or rule of cool?
It's a really good question. I mean, like with our show, it's rule is cool, right?
Yes. Yes.
Like it really is. Like there's not kind of no way around it. Like we really, I really, like I said, there's a lot of improv in the show, and yes,
Mm-hmm.
and is a really fun, powerful thing to do.
Yes, it is. And
Yeah.
it's so much fun. Like you incorporated um, Jenga and all these different type of games within the show. Um, and obviously it's one of those things that it takes a lot of personality and a lot of like confidence to be able to volunteer to come up on the stage and be part of it. But in order to do the job that are currently doing, what particular like strength or personality would you think someone would need to be successful as you are or have been?
Oh, you mean to do our show?
Yes, to do not only do your
Um.
show, but to produce it and to
Oh.
even just get on the stage.
Uh, well, those are two very different things, right? I mean,
Hmm.
like to do our show, people are asking us every week, when's our next audition? How do I get a
Oh
new show? I want
wow,
to be an
okay.
intern. You gotta be an improv actor, you gotta be a D&D player. That's it, right? And you gotta be fearless, right?
Yeah.
In terms of doing it. Um, Look, the producing thing is tough. Like it's an entrepreneurial art form.
Yeah.
I have a very specific point of view. I'm on a very specific mission right now that none of
Hmm.
my colleagues are on with me. This is a very lonely road because I'm doing something so outside the box.
Yeah.
Um, it's really hard, right? And
Hmm.
there's two things that I always tell people, which is like you cannot be afraid of failure because failure is inevitable. It
Right.
is absolutely something that is going to happen. You are going to fail,
Hmm.
right? There is just no way. Because the only way you can actually learn is through failure,
Right.
right? Um, the second thing that I always tell people about this journey is you are in a competition with yourself and nobody else. Do
Hmm.
not ever look around you at what everybody else is doing. Do not ever compare yourself to anybody else's success or anybody else's money or any other things. None of that matters. What only matters is how you are doing with yourself in doing this. And that's really, really hard because I cannot begin to explain to you how hard this is,
Yeah.
right?
I, I
Right?
I don't have any clue how hard it is.
Yeah.
It just seems hard from the outside, and I'm gonna take that and multiply it by 100, and I probably be not even close.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Like, look, like, I'm not the best at raising money, but I get it done. It's hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult. My business plans are sometimes wacky and don't make sense to investors, but I ended up. But Puffs is a profitable venture. Slava's got 50% of his money back on Broadway and was going to get the rest if I could have put a tour up, but the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic killed that. This will eventually be a profitable venture. But it's hard. Like
Yeah.
you've got to do this for a while in order to build it, and like you have to believe in a time. You have to believe during times when nobody else does.
Oh, that's amazing. So we have only a few minutes left. So there's a couple things I want to ask real quick. Is that what about the TTRPG community? Do you love, and what about it do you hate?
Um, the I mean, the hate's the easy answer, right? The hate is really easy because it's the hate part,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. Yep.
Like it is really tough to like I'll speak specifically to 20 Tavern, right? Which
Hmm.
is what we announced. People being like, "That looks stupid." I'm like, "You haven't even seen it."
Yeah.
Or like a Dungeon and Dragon show. That's the worst idea I've ever heard. I'm like, "You haven't even heard
Heard
the
of?
idea. You just heard
Yeah.
the title, right?" And so there's like, and again, that's the internet. That's the stay in rage. But there's a lot of rush to judgment on what everybody does,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
It, so like that. So that can be tough from the fandom sometimes. That like they are just so primed to have opinions without information,
Oh,
right? That happens a
100%.
lot,
One hundred
right?
percent true. That is 100% true.
That said, the community is so giving, right? They're so giving
Yes.
of their love, and I would say this goes back to Puffs when getting into the Potter fandom, and we started receiving fan art backstage,
Hmm.
unsolicited. People just started sending us stuff, right?
Right.
And obviously that happens, which is you have an audience and you have a fandom, you have TTRB of people who are inherently creative people who want to express their love through creative outlets by knitting you something,
Yeah.
right? Or,
Yeah.
or painting you something, or sending you dye because
Yes.
they just were so moved by the experience that it's just so kind of amazing to say people send us gifts all the time just because they laughed at our show. And that's beautiful. That's a
It's
beautiful thing. I never
amazing.
send a gift after a movie, right?
That's true. That's 100% true. Oh my God, you're right.
Yeah, but
um,
like they do on our show because they feel
yeah.
that live connection. So there is something about the TTRPG community, which is the live space of it. The people who play games together generate so much love and community together, and we feel that being a live show,
Right.
right? It's really lovely.
I
I mean, and
love
that's the
it.
thing. It's the act of getting together to play a game that I love the most. That of course I built into a stage experience. But that act of it's Friday night, not obviously not tonight because I'm here, but like it's Friday night. What are we playing tonight?
Hmm.
What are we gonna do? Like that's what got me through the pandemic. I played a game with my pod called The King's Dilemma. That was one of the best fucking board games I've ever played in my life. Right?
I
It
have to
was an
send you
extraordinary.
a game that I think you're gonna absolutely love. I'll send it for your birthday. I'll let you know about it right before we leave. Um, we have time for one question, and we have one question in the queue. It's from Among Mates D&D who asks, "Who is the BBEG GM DM of the D&D TTRPG world in your opinion?"
Oh, I can't answer that question. Sorry. I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna do that. No, no, no. Like, nice try, but like, no, 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 no. I really like. Look, I do not say anything negative about anyone. I stay away. I stay away from that at all.
She's like, "Nope."
Yeah, it's no, no. I don't. I really espouse that rule of like trying not to spread negativity
Yes.
publicly or
Yes.
criticism publicly. Like I'll give you for instance. So I have a ton of people who work on Broadway shows, like friends who
Mhm.
work on Broadway shows, right? And I've worked on Broadway shows, and it breaks your heart when someone criticizes your show. When
Yeah.
you're like,
Yeah.
hey, that's really hard because I put a lot of time and energy and effort. You can say, hey, the show wasn't for me, or like, hey, good job, you guys are good. But like
Right.
when you really go for it, it's really hurtful. And I really try not to do that because I've been hurt so many times
Right.
by
Right.
friends who did not like what I'm doing. And now it's like I don't, so I just don't do it. I don't spread it.
Fair. Fair.
I'll take
So
another question though.
well, we
If you
don't
have
have
one.
another question, and we
Okay.
are running short on time. So, because of that, um, uh, tell everyone what we can expect from the future from David Carpenter, the executive producer, the David Carpenter, the man, and 20-sided Tavern and Gamiotics.
So I'm all in on Gamionics right now. I'm working on another. I'm on another funding round right now. Working through another funding round right now that will allow me to do further software development. There are areas that I want to get into in terms of software development, in terms of what it can do,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of different types of experiences that aren't just what we're doing right now. So hopefully in about a year from now, I'll be able to unveil a whole new version of the software that
Ooh.
that is going to be able to do a lot more. There's a lot of upgrades to the current software that I want to get done,
Mm-hmm.
being able to do it, especially on that licensing front within the next few years. So there's a bunch of stuff that's happening there. On the 20 Side Tavern, additional productions, getting the U.S. tour out. I'm starting to think internally right now about what does a new campaign look like. because we're
Okay.
doing the Periods of Chaos campaign. What's the next one going to be? Because I want to be able to write a new campaign for the show and work with a team. And there are people who put their hands up who said, I want to write your next campaign that are really interesting to talk to.
Oh, that's amazing. I want to write your next campaign.
And then there's other IP that I
Mm,
want to work on.
okay.
So in some interesting early conversations about developing another project, like not 20 Side Tavern, but like a gamiotics platform
Ooh, okay.
project. And so probably a couple years out from that.
Right, right.
Right now.
Okay.
I
That's
am very busy with this show right now in New
yeah.
York, Australia, and then on the road. Kind of when I get through opening the tour, I can start focusing on a lot of the next things.
Oh, that sounds amazing. That sounds amazing. Well, I want to thank you so much for being here. This is a lot of fun. You're a busy person, so I have to let you go.
Thank
Um,
you.
I normally ask my guests that if they're familiar with Twitch to guide our raid, but I'm going to assume that you are not. So I will be guiding the raid tonight. We're
Yeah.
gonna we're gonna go see a barber's art boutique. They're doing D&D tonight. Super excited! They're super fun, guys. Hang out for the raid. For tomorrow, we'll be doing a little bit of world building, but look out for it on November 10th. We have a brand new show coming in where it's going to be DMing with me and a special guest. Our first guest will be Sarah Moore. Super excited. Go check them out at Pixies and Pins. They do Gen Con TV. Absolutely amazing creator. Can't wait to see you guys. We're going to raid out now. Thank you so much for being here. It's
Thanks for having me,
absolutely
Tim. I appreciate
amazing.
it.
I cannot wait. And guys, as always, if you can't be good, please be careful. And if you, as always, please remember it's better to be kind than to be nice.